'Cause I don't wanna be in love with another, even in another life. All right, so we have quite a bit of book to go through. It'd be quite the Herculean task if we were to complete this almost incomprehensible amount of pages, but I think with like stuff like this, I move a lot faster, you know? So yeah, let's do it. Let's fucking do it. Got a water with me, a burrito. We'll see. Let's just feel it out. I doubt we'll get through all of it. But we'll just feel it out. Okay. 4 months later, January 2013. She's in her apartment with her friends. The scholarship exams finish this weekend. Term is about to start again on Monday. She feels drained, like a vessel turned out onto its rim. She's smoking her fourth cigarette of the evening. Whoa. Which gives her a curious acidic sensation in her chest. I wonder why. And she also hasn't eaten dinner. I wonder why. For lunch, she had a tangerine and a piece of unbuttered toast. Peggy is on her sofa telling a story about interrailing. Interrailing in Europe, and for some reason she insists on explaining the difference between West and East Berlin. Marlene exhales and says absently, "Yes, I've been there." Peggy turns to her, eyes widened. "You've been to Berlin?" she says. "I didn't think they let people from Connacht travel that far." Some of their friends laugh politely. Marianne taps the ash off her cigarette into the ceramic tray on the arm of the sofa. "Extremely hilarious," she says. "They must have given you time off from the farm," says Peggy. "Quite," says Marianne. Peggy continues telling her story. She has lately taken to sleeping over at Marianne's apartment when Jamie's not home, eating breakfast in her bed and even following her to the bathroom when she showers, clipping her toenails blithely and complaining about men. Marianne likes to be singled out as her special friend, even when this expresses itself as a tendency to take up vast amounts of her leisure time. But at certain parties lately, Peggy has also started to make fun of her in front of others. For the sake of their friends, Marianne tries to laugh along, but the effort contorts her face, which only gives Peggy another chance to tease her. When everyone else has gone home, she snuggles into Marianne's shoulders and says, "Don't be mad with me." And Marianne says, a thin, defensive voice, "I'm not mad at you." They are right now shaping up to have this exact exchange yet again in just a short few hours. Sounds familiar. After the Berlin story concludes, Marianne gets another bottle of wine from the kitchen and refills people's glasses. "How did the exams go, by the way?" Sophie asks her. Marianne gives a humorous shrug and is rewarded with a little laughter. Her friends sometimes seem uncertain about her dynamic with Peggy, volunteering extra laughter when Marianne tries to be funny, but in a way that could only seem sympathetic or even pitying rather than amused. "Tell the truth," says Peggy. "You fucked them up, didn't you?" Marianne smiles, makes a face, puts the cap back on the wine bottle. "The scholarship exams finished 2 days ago." Peggy and Marianne sat them together. "Well, they could have gone better," Marianne says diplomatically. This 100% This is 100% typical you," says Peggy. "You're the smartest person in the world, but when it comes down to it, you're a bottler." You can sit them again next year," says Sophie. "I doubt they went badly," says Joanna. Marianne avoids Joanna's eyes and puts the wine back into the fridge. "The scholarships offer 5 years of paid tuition, free accommodation on campus, and meals in the dining hall every evening with other scholars." Damn. For Marianne, who doesn't pay her own rent or tuition, she has no real concept of how much these things cost. It's just a matter of reputation. She would like her superior intellect to be affirmed in public by the transfer of large amounts of money. That way, she could affect modestly without having anyone actually believe in her. The fact is, the exams didn't go badly, they went fine. My stats professor was on at me to sit them, says Jamie, but I just couldn't be fucked studying over Christmas. Marianne produces another vacant smile. Jamie didn't sit the exams because he knew he wouldn't pass them. If he did, everyone in the room knows this also. He's trying to brag, but he lacks the self awareness to understand that what he's saying is legible as bragging and that no one believes the brag anyway. There's something reassuring in how transparent he is to her. Early in their relationship, without any apparent forethought, she told him she was a submissive. She was surprised even hearing herself say it. Maybe she did it to shock him. What do you mean? He asked, feeling worldly. She replied, "You know, I like guys to hurt me." After that, he started to tie her up and beat her with various objects. When she thinks about how little she respects him, she feels disgusted and begins to hate herself. And these feelings trigger in her an overwhelming desire to be subjugated and, in a way, broken. What happens when it happens, her brain simply goes empty, like a room with the light turned off, and she shudders into orgasms without perceptible joy. Then it begins again. She thinks about breaking up with him, which she frequently does. It's not his reaction to Peggy she finds herself thinking about the most. Peggy, like Jamie, which is to say that she thinks he's a kind of fascist, but a fascist with no essential power over Marianne. Marianne complains about him sometimes, and Peggy says things like, "Well, he's a Calvinist pig. What do you expect?" Peggy thinks men are disgusting animals with no impulse control, and that women should avoid relying on them for emotional support. It took a long time for it to dawn on Marianne. Get out of here, web root. Goodbye. Okay. It took a long time for it to dawn on Marianne that Peggy was using the guise of her general critique of men to defend Jamie whenever Marianne complained about him. "What did you expect?" Peggy would say. "Or you think that's bad?" "By male standards, he's a prince." Marianne has no idea why she does this. Anytime Marianne makes the suggestion, however tentative, that things might be coming to an end with Jamie, Peggy's temper flares up. They've even fought about it, fights that end in Peggy curiously declaring that she doesn't care whether they break up or not, anyways, and Marianne, by then exhausted and confused, saying they probably won't. When Marianne sits back down, her phone starts ringing a number she doesn't recognize. She stands up and gets it, gesturing from others to continue talking, and wanders back into the kitchen. "Hello," she says. "Hi, it's Connell. This is a bit awkward, but I've just had some of my things stolen, like my wallet and my phone and stuff." "Jesus, how awful. What happened?" "I'm just wondering. See, I'm all the way out in Dun Laugerer? And I don't have any money to get a taxi or anything. I wonder if there's any way I could meet up with you and maybe borrow some cash or something." All her friends are looking at her now, and she waves them to get back into their conversation. From the armchair, Jamie continues to watch her on the phone. "Of course, don't worry about that," she says. I'm home right now, so do you want to get a taxi over here? I'll come outside and pay the driver. Does that suit you? You can ring the bell when you're here." "Yeah, all right, thanks. Thanks, Marianne. I'm borrowing this phone, so I'd better give it back now. See you in a bit." He hangs up. Her friends look at her expectantly as she holds the phone in one hand and turns to face them. She explains what happens, and they all express sympathy for Connell. He still comes to her parties occasionally just for a quick drink before heading somewhere else. He told Marianne in September what had happened with Paul and Erie, and it made Marianne feel unearthly, possessed of violence she had never known before. "I know I'm being dramatic," Connell said. It's not like she did anything bad, but I feel fucked up about it." Marianne heard herself in a voice like hard ice saying, "I would like to slit her throat." Connell looked up and laughed just from shock. "Jesus, Marianne," he said. But he was laughing. "I would," she insisted. He shook his head. You have to tone down these violent impulses, he said. You can't be going around slashing people's throats. They'll put you in prison. Marianne let a laugh off, but quietly she said, if she ever lays hands on you again, I'll do it. I don't care. She has only spare change in her purse, put in a drawer in her bedside cabinet. She has 300 euro in cash. She goes in there now without switching the light on, and she can hear the voices of her friends murmur through the wall. The cash is there, 650s. She takes three and folds them into her purse quietly. Then she sits on the side of the bed, not wanting to go back right away. Things at home were tense over Christmas. Alan gets anxious and highly strung whenever they have guests over in the house. One night after their aunt and uncle left, Alan followed Marianne down to the kitchen, where she had taken their empty cups of tea. State of you, he said, bragging about the exam results. Marianne turned on the hot tap and measured the temperature with her fingers. Alan stood inside the doorway, arms folded. I didn't bring it up, she said. They did. If that's all you have to brag about in life, I feel sorry for you, said Alan. The water from the tap got warmer, and Marianne put the plug in the sink and squeezed a little bit of soap out into the sponge. Are you listening to me? Said Alan. Yes, you feel sorry for me. I'm listening. You're fucking pathetic. You're fucking pathetic. So you are. Message received, she said. She placed one of the cups on the draining board to dry and dipped another into the hot water. Do you think you're smarter than me? He said. She ran her wet sponge around the inside of the teacup. That's a strange question, she said. I don't know. I've never thought about it. Well, you're not, he said. Okay, fair enough. Okay, fair enough, he repeated in a cringingly girlish voice. No wonder you have no friends. You can't even have a normal conversation. Right. You should hear what people say about you in town. Involuntarily, because this idea was so ridiculous to her, she laughed. Enraged now, Alan wrenched her back from the sink by her upper arm and seemingly spontaneously spat on her. Then he released her arm. A visible drop of spit had landed on the cloth of her shirt. Wow, she said, that's disgusting. Alan turned and left the room, and Marianne went back to rinsing the dishes. Lifting the fourth teacup onto the draining board, she noticed a mild but perceptible tremor in her right hand. On Christmas Day, her mother gave her an envelope with 500 euro in it. There was no card. It was one of those small brown paper envelopes she used for Lorraine's wages. Marianne, thank you, and Denise said airily, I'm a bit concerned about you. Marianne fingered the envelope and tried to arrange her face into a suitable expression. What about me? She said. Well, said Denise, what are you doing with your life? Where are you going? I don't know. I think I still have a lot of options open. I'm just focusing on college at the moment. And then what? Marianne pressed her thumb on the envelope and smudged it until a faint dark smear appeared on the paper. As I said, she repeated, I don't know. I'm worried the real world will come as a bit of a shock to you, said Denise. In what way? I don't know if you realize that university is a very protective environment. It's not like a workplace. Well, I doubt anyone in a workplace will spit on me over a disagreement, said Marianne. It would be pretty frowned upon, as I understand. Denise gave a tight-lipped smile. If you can't handle a little sibling rivalry, I don't know how you're going to manage adult life, darling, she said. Let's see how it goes. And this, Denise struck the kitchen table with her open palm. Marianne flinched, but didn't look up, didn't let go of the envelope. You think you're so special, do you? Said Denise. Marianne let her eyes close. No, she said, I don't. It's almost 1 in the morning by the time Connell rings the buzzer. Marianne goes downstairs with her purse and finds a taxi is idling outside the building. In the square opposite, a mist wrenches itself around the trees. Winter nights are so exquisite, she thinks of saying to Connell. He's standing, talking to the driver through the window. With his back turned, when he hears the door, he turns around and she sees his mouth cut, bloody, dark, like a dried ink. She steps back, clutching her collarbone, and Connell goes, I know I saw myself in the mirror, but I'm okay, actually. I just need to get cleaned up. In a state of confusion, she pays the driver, almost dropping her change in the gutter. On the staircase inside, she sees Connell's upper lip swollen into a hard, shiny mass on the right side, his teeth the color of blood. Oh, God, she says, what happened? He takes her hand kindly, stroking her knuckles with his thumb. Some guy came up and asked me for my wallet, he says, and I told him no for some reason, and then he hit me in the face. I mean, it was a bad idea. I should have given him the money. Sorry for calling you. It's the only number I knew off the top of my head. O'Connell, how awful. I have friends around, but what suits you? Do you want to have a shower or something and you can stay here, or do you just want to get some cash and go home? They're outside the door of her apartment now and they pause there. Whatever's good for you, he says. I'm really drunk, by the way. I'm sorry. Oh, how drunk? Well, I haven't been home since the exams. I don't know. Do you still have pupils? Do I still have pupils? She looked in his eyes, where his pupils are swollen to round black bullets. Yes, he said, they're huge. He strokes her hand again and says more quietly, oh well, they get like that when I see you anyways. She laughs, shaking her head. You're definitely drunk. You're flirting with me, she says. Jamie's here, you know. Connell breathes through his nose, then glances over his own shoulder. Maybe I'll just go black out and get punched in the face again. Come on, Connell. He says, it wasn't that bad. She smiles, but he lets go of her hand. She opens the door in the living room. Her friends all gasp and make him retell the story, which he does, though without the desired drama. Marianne gets him a glass of water, which he swills in his mouth and then spits into the kitchen sink, pink like coral. Fucking lowlife scum, says Jamie. Who, me? Says Connell. That's not very nice. We can't all go to private school. Jamie laughs. Connell isn't usually hostile, and Marianne wonders if getting punched in the face has put him in a hostile mood, or else he's more drunk than she thought. I was talking about the guy that robbed you, says Jamie, and he was probably stealing to buy drugs, by the way. That's what most of them do. Connell touches his teeth with his fingers as to ascertain that they were still in his mouth. Then he wipes his hands on a dish towel. Oh well, he says, it's not an easy life out there for a drug addict. No, indeed, says Jonah. Uh, they could always they could always try. I don't know giving up drugs, says Jamie. Connell laughs and says, yeah, I'm sure they've just never thought of that. Everyone's quiet, and Connell gives a bashful smile. His teeth are less insane looking now that he's rinsed them with water. Sorry, everyone, he says. I'll get out of your way. They all insist he's not in their way, except Jamie, who says nothing. Marianne experiences a flash of maternalistic desire to run Connell a bath. Jonah asks him if he's in pain, and he responds by rubbing his front teeth with a fingertip again and then saying, it's not that bad. He's wearing a black jacket over a stained white t-shirt, under which Marianne recognizes the glimmer of an adorned silver necklace he's had since school. Peggy once described the neck chain as an Argo's chic, which made Marianne cringe, though she couldn't tell which friend she was cringing for. How much cash do you think you'll need? She says to Connell. The question is sensitive enough that her friends start to talk amongst themselves. So she feels has him almost alone. So she feels like he has. So she feels she has him almost all alone. Okay, there we go. He shrugs. You might not be able to make withdrawals with your bank account, she says. He squeezes his eyes shut and touches his forehead. Fuck me, I'm so drunk, he says. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm hallucinating. What are you asking me? Money. How much can I give you? Oh, I don't know, 10 quid? Let me give you 100, she says. What? No. They argue like this for a while until Jimmy comes up and touches Marianne's arm. She's suddenly conscious of the ugliness and wants to pull away from him. His hairline is receding. He has a weak, jawless face. Beside him, and even covered in blood, Connell radiates good health and charisma. I'll probably have to head off shortly, says Jamie. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, says Marianne. Jamie looks at her in shock, and she swallows the impulse to say, what? Instead, she smiles. It's not like she's the world's best looking person, far from it. In certain photographs, she appears not only plain, but garishly ugly, baring her crooked teeth for the camera like a piece of vermin. Guiltily, she squeezes Jamie's wrist as if she could perform the following impossible act of communication. To Jamie, that Connell is injured and regrettably requires her attention. Well, to Connell, she would rather not be touching Jamie at all. All right, says Jamie. Well, good night then. He kisses the side of her face and gets his jacket. Everyone thanks Marianne for having them. Glasses are left on the draining board or in the sink. The front door closes, and she and Connell are now alone. She feels her shoulder muscles relaxing, like their solitude is a narcotic. She feels the kettle and takes cups down from the press, then places some more of the dirty glasses in the sink and empties the ashtray. Is he still your boyfriend then? Says Connell. She smiles. So does he. She takes 2 tea bags from the box and taps them down into the cups while the kettle is boiling. She loves to be alone with him like this. It makes her life seem very manageable suddenly. He is, she says. And why would that be the case? Why is he my boyfriend? Yeah, says Connell. What's going on there in terms of like, why are you still going out with him? Marianne snorts. I presume you'll have tea, she says. He nods. He puts his right hand in his pocket. She takes a carton of milk from the fridge. It's damp in her fingers. Connell is standing against the kitchen counter now, his mouth swollen, but most of the blood rinsed off, and his face looks brutally handsome. You can have a different boyfriend, he says. I mean, guys are constantly falling in love with you from what I hear. Stop that. You're the kind of person people either love or hate you. The kettle clicks, it switches, and she lifts it out of the cradle. She feels one of the cups and then the other. Well, you don't hate me, she says. He doesn't say anything at first. Then he says, no, I'm immune to you, in a way, because I knew you in school. When I was an ugly loser, says Marianne. No, you were never ugly. She puts the kettle back down. She feels a certain power over him, a dangerous power. Do you think I'm still pretty? She says. He looks at her, probably knowing what she's doing, and then looks down at his own hands, as if reminding himself of his physical stature in the room. You're in a good mood, he says. Must have been a good party. She ignores this. Fuck you, she thinks, but she doesn't mean it. She dumps the tea bags in the sink with a spoon, then uses the milk and replaces it in the fridge, all with rapid movements of someone dealing impatiently with a drunk friend. I'd rather literally anyone else, says Connell. I'd rather the guy who mugged me be your boyfriend. What do you care? He says nothing. She thinks of the way she treated Jamie before he left, and he rubs her face with her hands. Some milk-drinking clonchy, Jamie said Connell once. It's true she has seen Connell drink milk directly from the carton. Yeah, I do that. Well, not milk, but orange juice and such. He plays video games with aliens in them. He has opinions about football managers. He's wholesome like a big baby tooth. Probably never in his life has he thought about inflicting pain on someone for sexual purposes. He's a good person. He's a nice friend. So why does she go after him like this all the time, pressing him for something? Does she have to be her old desperate self around him always? Do you love him? Says Connell. Her hand pauses on the door fridge. Unlike you to take an interest in my feelings, Connell, she says. I kind of thought that stuff was off limit for us, I have to say. All right, okay. He rubs at his mouth again, looking distracted now. Then he drops his hand and looks at the kitchen window. Look, he says, I probably should have told you before, but I've been seeing someone. I've been with her for a while. I should have mentioned it to you. Marianne is so in shock by this news that it feels physical. Oh God, that's so good. She looks at him, plainly unable to disguise her astonishment. In the time they've been friends, he has never had a girlfriend. She's never even given much to the thought of the idea he might want one. What? She says. How long have you guys been together? About 6 weeks. Her name is Helen Brophy. Brophy? I don't know. Would you know her? She studies medicine. Marianne turns her back on him and takes the cup from the counter. She tries to hold her shoulders very still, frightened that she'll cry and he'll see her. Why are you trying to get me to break up with Jamie then? She says. I'm not. I just want you to be happy, that's all. Because you're such a good friend. Is it? Well, yeah, he says. I mean, I don't know. The cup in Marianne's hands is too hot to hold, but instead of placing it down again, she just lets the pain seep into her fingers, down into her flesh. Are you in love with her? She says. Yeah, I do love her, yeah. I assume if he was saying it, he would have a high pitched voice because he actually doesn't love her, really. 6 weeks, that's too short. Mm. 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 Let me go check something. Cause I don't wanna be in love with another. Oh. Hmm. Who gives a fuck? Cause I don't wanna be in love with another. Wait. Can I edit the. Let's do that. Okay. Let's continue. Let's continue. She tries to hold her shoulders very still, frightened that she'll cry and he'll see her. Why are you trying to? Okay, we read it. We read this. Are you in love with her? She says. Yeah, I do love her. Yeah. Now Marianne starts crying. The most embarrassing thing that has happened to her in her adult life. Her back is turned, but she feels her shoulders jerk upward in a horrible voluntary spasm. Jesus, says Connell. Marianne, fuck off. Fuck off. Um, fuck off. Connell touches her back and she jolts away from him like he's trying to hurt her. She puts the cup down on the counter to wipe her face roughly with her sleeve. Just go away, she says. Leave me alone. Marianne, don't. I feel awful, okay? I should have told you before. I'm sorry. I don't want to talk to you. Just leave. For a while, nothing happens. She chews on the inside of her cheek until the pain begins to settle her nerves and she's not crying anymore. She dries her face again, and with her hands this time and turns around. Please, she says, just go. Please just go. He sighs, looking at the floor. He rubs his eyes. Yeah, he says, look, I'm really sorry to ask, but I do think I kind of need some money to get home. I'm sorry. She remembers then and feels bad. In fact, she smiles at him. That's how bad she feels. Oh God, she says. In the excitement there, I forgot you actually got assaulted. Can I give you 250s? Is that okay? He nods, but he's not looking at her. She knows that he feels bad. She wants to be grown up about things. She finds her purse and hands him the money, which he puts in his pocket. He looks down, blinking and clearing his throat, like he's going to cry too. I'm sorry, he says. It's nothing, she says. Don't worry about it. He rubs at his nose, and man, there's a lot of rubbing. Well, I don't know, I guess he's just nervous. He rubs at his nose and looks around the room like he's never going to see it again. You know, I didn't really know what was going on with us last summer, he says. Like when I had to move home and all that. I kind of thought maybe you would let me stay here or something. I don't know what happened with us in the end. She feels a sharp pain in her chest, and her hand flies to her throat, clutching at nothing. You told me you wanted to see other people, she says. I had no idea you wanted to stay here. I thought you were breaking up with me. He rubs his palm flat against his mouth for a second and then breathes out. You didn't say anything about wanting to stay here, she adds. You would have been welcome, obviously. You always have been. Right. Okay, he says. Look, I'll head off then. Have a good night, yeah? He leaves. The door clicks shut behind him, not very loudly. In the art block the next morning, Jamie kisses her in the front of everyone and says she looks beautiful. How was Connell last night? He says. She grips Jamie's hand. She gives him a conspiratorial roll of her eyes. Oh, he was out of it, she says. I got rid of him eventually. 6 months later. Have another little bite. Ski. Yummy. Very good. Very good. Okay. 6 months later, July 2013. He wakes up just after 8. It's bright outside. The window and the carriage is warming up. A heavy warmth of breath and sweat. Minor train stations with unreadable names flash past and vanish. Elaine is already awake, but Niall is still sleeping. Connell rubs his left eye with his knuckles and sits up. Elaine is reading one of her novels she has brought with her on the journey, a novel with a glossy cover and words, now major motion picture, along the top. The actress on the front has been their constant companion for weeks. Connell feels an almost friendly affinity with her pale period drama face. Whereabouts are we, do you know? Says Connell. Elaine looks up from the book. We just passed Ljubljana? About 2 hours ago. They must be traveling. Unless that's just how interesting city towns are in Dublin, Ireland, I guess. All right, he says. We're not far then. Connell looks over at Niall, who's sleeping. Head is bobbing slightly on his neck. Elaine follows his gaze out for the count as usual, she says. There were others at the beginning. Some friends of Elaine's went with them from Berlin to Prague. Okay, yeah, so they are traveling. And they met a few of Niall's engineering classmates in Bratislava before they crossed over to Vienna on the train. Hostels were cheap, and the cities they visited had a pleasantly temporary feeling about them. Nothing did there seemed to stay with him. Nothing Connell did there seemed to stay with him. The whole trip felt like a series of short films screened only once, and afterwards he had a a sense of what they were about, but no exact memories of the plot. He remembers seeing things out the windows of taxis. In each city, he finds an internet cafe and completes the same three rituals of communication. He calls Helen on Skype, he sends his mother a free text message from his phone's network website, and writes Marianne an email. Helen is on J1 in Chicago for the summer. In the background of their calls, he can hear her girlfriends chatting, doing things with each other like their hair, and sometimes Helen would turn and say something to them like, "Guys, please, I'm on the phone." He loves seeing her face on screen, especially when the connection is good and her movements are smooth and lifelike. She has a great smile, great teeth. After the end of their call yesterday, he paid at the counter, walked back onto the sunshine, and bought himself an overpriced glass of Coke with some ice. Sometimes when Helen has a lot of friends around, or if the internet cafe is especially crowded, their conversation could get a little awkward, but even still, he feels better after talking to her. He finds himself rushing to the end of the conversation so they could hang up, and that he can retrospectively savor how much he likes seeing her without the moment to moment pressure of having to produce the right expressions and to say the right things. Just to see Helen, her beautiful face, her smile, and to know that she continues loving him, this puts the gift of joy into his days, and for hours he feels nothing but a light-headed happiness. Helen has given Connell a new way to live. It's as if an impossibly heavy lid has been lifted off his emotional life, and suddenly he can breathe fresh air. It is physically it is physically possible to type and send a message reading "I love you." It never seemed possible before, not remotely, but in fact, it's easy. Of course, if someone saw the message, he would be embarrassed, but he knows now that his normal kind of embarrassment and almost protective impulse toward a particularly good part of life. He could sit down to dinner with Helen's parents. He can accompany her to her friends' parties. He can tolerate the smiling and the exchange of repetitive conversation. He can squeeze her hand while people ask him questions about his future. When she touches him spontaneously, applying a little pressure to his arm, or even reaching to brush a piece of lint off his collar, he feels a rush of pride and he hopes that people are watching them. To be known as her boyfriend plants him firmly in the social world, establishes him as an acceptable person, someone with a particular status, someone whose conversational silences are thoughtful rather than socially awkward. Damn. What a fantastic, yeah, what a fantastic sentence. The texts he sends Lorraine are fairly businesslike. He updates her on when they see historic landmarks or cultural treasures. Yesterday, hey from Vienna, Stephen's Cathedral, fairly overrated to be honest, but the Art History Museum was good. Hope things are okay at home. She likes to ask how Helen's doing. The first time they met, Helen and his mother hit it off right away. Whenever Helen visits, Lorraine is always shaking her head at Connell little behaviors and saying, "How do you put up with him, sweetheart?" But whatever, it's nice they get along. Helen is his first girlfriend he has introduced to his mother, and he's curiously eager to impress on Lorraine how normal their relationship is and how nice of a person Helen considers him to be. He's not sure where this stems from exactly. In the weeks they've been apart, he emails to Marianne have been lengthy. He started drafting them on his phone in idle moments while waiting for his clothes in the laundrette or lying in the hostel at night when he can't sleep for the heat. He reads over these drafts, repeatedly reviewing all the elements of prose, moving clauses around to make the sentences fit together correctly. Time softens out while he types, feeling slow and dilated while actually passing very rapidly, and more than once he's looked up to find that hours have gone by. He couldn't explain aloud what he finds so absorbing about his emails to Marianne, but he doesn't feel that it's trivial. The experience of writing them feels like an expression of a broader and more fundamental principle, something to his identity, or something even more abstract to do with life itself. In his gray journal, he wrote recently, "Idea for a story told through emails?" Then he crossed it out, deciding it was gimmicky. In 2013, that'd probably be cool, but maybe if it was like set during like the AOL period, or like, yeah, I mean, there was a game on that was based off of AOL that I think was like be nice to this girl or she'll commit suicide. I don't know. It was this one game. It was like a commentary on like internet relationships and the validity of them, I think. I don't know. But I think during 2013 there might be a market for maybe something like this. He finds himself crossing things out on his journal as he imagines some future person poring over it in detail, as if he wants the future person to know which ideas he thought better of. His correspondence with Marianne includes a lot of links to news reports at the moment. They're both engrossed in Edward Snowden's story. Oh, Marianne because of her interest in the architecture of global surveillance, and Connell because of the fascinating personal drama. He reads all the speculation online. He watches the blurry footage from that specific airport, Sherman Shiremtivio Airport. He and Marianne can only talk about it over email using the same communication technologies. They now are under surveillance, and it feels at times like their relationship has been captured in a complex network of state power, that the network is a form of intelligence in and of itself, containing them both and containing their feelings for another. I feel like the NSA agent reading these emails has the wrong impression of us, Marianne wrote once. They probably don't know about the time you didn't invite me to Deb's. She writes him a lot about the house they were staying at with Jamie and Peggy outside the Trist. She recounts the going-ons, how she feels, how she surmises the others are feeling. She summaries or surmises the others are feeling and what she's reading and thinking about. He writes to her about the cities they visit, sometimes including a paragraph describing a particular sight or scene. He wrote about coming up from the U-Bahn station in Schrodenlistrebe, something German, to find it was suddenly dark out, and the fronds of the trees waving over them, like spooky fingers, and the noise from the bars, the smell of pizza and exhaust fumes. It feels powerful to him. To put experience down into words, like he's trapping it in a jar and it can never fully leave him. He told Marianne once that he'd been writing stories and now she keeps asking to read them. If they're as good as your emails, they must be superb, she wrote. That was nice. That was a nice thing to read. Though he responded honestly, they're not as good as my emails. He and Niall and Elaine had arranged to get a train from Vienna to Trieste to spend their last few nights in Marianne's holiday home before they all fly back to Dublin together. A day trip to Venice has been mentioned. Last night they got on a train with their backpacks, and Connell texted Marianne, should be there tomorrow afternoon, won't have time to reply to your email properly before then. He had almost no clean clothes left. He was wearing a gray t-shirt, black jeans, and dirty white trainers. In his backpack, variously lightly soiled clothes, one clean white t-shirt, an empty plastic bottle of water, clean underwear, a rolled-up phone charger, his passport, 2 packets of generic paracetamol, a very beaten-up copy of James Slatter's novel, and for Marianne, an edition of Frank O'Hara's selected poems he found in an English-language bookshop in Berlin. One soft-covered gray notebook. Elaine nudges Niall until his head jerks his eyes open. He asks what time it is and were they there yet, and Elaine tells him. Then Niall links his fingers together and stretches his arms out in front of him. His joints crack quietly. Connell looks out the window as they pass the landscape. Dry yellows and greens, the orange slant of a tiled roof, a window cut flat by the sun flashing. The university scholarships were announced back in April. The provost stood on the steps of the exam hall and read out the list of scholars. The sky was extremely blue that day, delirious like flavored ice. Connell was wearing his jacket and Helen had her arms wrapped around his. When it came to the English department, they read out 4 names alphabetically, and the last one, Connell Wardren. Helen threw her arms around him. That was it. They said his name and moved on. He waited in the square until they announced history and politics, and when he heard Marianne's name, he looked around to see her. He could hear a circle of friends cheering and some applause. He put his hands in his pocket, hearing Marianne's name, he realized how real it was. He really had won the scholarship. They both had. He doesn't remember much of what happened then. He remembers calling Lorraine after the announcement. She was just quiet on the phone, shocked. And then she said, "Oh God, Jesus Christ." Niall and Elaine arrived beside, cheering and slapping his back and calling him an absolute fucking nerd. Connell was laughing at nothing, but just because so much excitement demanded some kind of outward expression and he didn't want to cry. That night, all the new scholars had to go to the formal black tie meal together in the dining hall. Connell borrowed a tux from someone in his class. It didn't fit very well at the dinner. He felt awkward trying to make conversation with the English professor seated next to him. He wanted to be with Helen and his friends, not with these people he had never met before and who knew nothing about him. Everything is possible now because of the scholarship. His rent is paid, his tuition is covered, he has a free meal every day in college. This is why he's been able to spend half a summer traveling around Europe, dis, uh, disseminating currency with the carefree attitude of a rich person. He's explained it or tried to explain it in his emails to Marianne. For her, the scholarship was a self esteem boost, a happy confirmation of what she had always believed about herself, anyways, that she's special. Connell has never really known whether to believe that about himself, and he still doesn't know. For him, the scholarship is a gigantic material fact, like a vast cruise ship that has sailed into view out of nowhere. And suddenly he can do a postgraduate program for free if he wants to, and live in Dublin for free, and never think about rent until he finishes college. That's amazing. Let's see. Suddenly, he can spend an afternoon in Vienna looking at Vermeer's The Art of Painting, and it's hot outside, and if he wants, he could buy himself a cheap cold glass of beer afterwards. It's something he assumed was just a painting backdrop all his life has revealed itself to be real. Foreign cities are real, and famous artworks, and underground railway systems, and the remnants of the Berlin Wall. That's money, the substance that makes the world real. There's something so corrupt and sexy about it. They get to Marianne's house at 3 in baking afternoon heat. The undergrowth outside the gate hums with insects, and a ginger cat is lying on the bonnet of a car across the street. Through the gate, Connell can see the house the same way it looked in the photograph she sent him. A stonework facade and a white shuttered windows. He sees the garden table with 2 cups left on its surface. Elaine rings the bell, and after a few seconds, someone appears from around the side of the house. It's Peggy. Lately, Connell has become convinced that Peggy doesn't like him, and he finds himself watching her behavior for evidence. She doesn't like her. He doesn't like her either, and never has, but that doesn't strike him as relevant. She races towards the gate, her sandals clapping on the gravel. The heat beats down on the back of Connell's neck like the feeling of human eyes staring. She unlocks the gate and lets him in, grinning, saying "Ciao, ciao." She's wearing short denim dress and huge black sunglasses. They all walk up the gravel toward the house, Niall carrying Elaine's backpack as well as his own. Peggy fishes a set of keys from her dress pocket and unlocks the front door. Inside the hall, a stony archway leads down a short flight of steps. The kitchen is a long room with terracotta tiles, white cupboards, and a table by the garden doors flooded with sunlight. Marianne is standing outside in the back garden among the cherry trees with a laundry basket in her arms. She's wearing a white dress with a held turtleneck, and her skin looks tanned. She's been hanging washing on the line. The air outside is very still, and the laundry hangs there in damp colors, not moving. Marianne puts her hand on the door handle, then sees them inside. This all seems to happen very slowly, though it only takes a few seconds. She opens the door and puts the basket on the table, and he feels a sort of enjoyable, painful sensation in his throat. Her dress looks immaculate, and he's conscious of how unwashed he may appear, not having showered since they left the hostel yesterday morning, and that his clothes aren't really clean. "Hello," says Elaine. Marianne smiles and says "ciao," as if she's making fun of herself, and she kisses Elaine's cheek and then Niall's and asks about their journey, and Connell stands there, overwhelmed by this feeling, which might only be total exhaustion, an exhaustion that has been accumulating for weeks. He can smell the scent of laundry. Up close, he sees Marianne's arms are lightly freckled. Her shoulders are a bright rose color. Presently, she turns to him and they exchange kisses on the cheek. Looking in his eyes, she says, "Well, hello." He senses a certain receptivity, receptivity in her expression, like she's gathering information about his feelings, something that they had learned to do to each other over a long time, like speaking in a private language. He can feel his face get warm as she looks at him, but he doesn't want to look away. He can gather information from her face too. He gathers that she has things she wants to tell him. "Hi," he says. "Marianne has accepted an offer to spend her third year of college in Sweden. She'll be leaving in September, and depending on their plans for Christmas, Connell might not see her again until next June. People are always telling him he's going to miss her, but until now, he's looking forward to how long and how intense their email correspondence will be while she's away. Now he looks into her cold, interpretive eyes and thinks, okay, I will miss her. He feels ambivalent about this, as if it's disloyal of him because maybe he's enjoying how she looks or some physical aspect of her closeness. He's not sure what friends are allowed to enjoy about each other. In a series of emails they exchanged recently about their own friendship, Marianne expresses her feelings about Connell mainly in terms of her sustained interest in his opinions and beliefs, the curiosity she feels about his life, and her instinct to survey his thoughts whenever she feels conflicted about anything. He expresses himself more in terms of identification, his sense of rooting for her and suffering with her when she suffers, his ability to perceive and sympathize with her motivations. Marianne thought this had something to do with gender roles. "I think I just like you a lot as a person," he replied defensively. "That's actually very sweet," she wrote back. Jamie comes down the steps behind them now. They all turn around to greet him. Connell makes a half nodding gesture, just barely inclining his chin upward. Jamie gives him a mocking smile and says, "You look rough, mate." Jamie has been a continual object of loathing and derision. Derision? Yeah. For Connell, since he became Marianne's boyfriend for several months after he first saw them together, Connell had a compulsive fantasies about kicking Jamie in the head until his skull was the texture of wet newspaper. Once, after speaking to Jamie briefly at a party, Connell left the building and punched a brick wall so hard his hands started bleeding. Jamie is somehow both boring and hostile at the same time, always yawning and rolling his eyes when other people are speaking. God. And yet, he is the most effortlessly confident person Connell has ever met. Nothing phases him. He doesn't seem capable of internal conflict. Connell can imagine him choking Marianne with his bare hands and feeling completely relaxed about it, which, according to her, he in fact does. Marianne puts on a pot of coffee while Piggy cuts into bread slices and arranges olives and ham onto plates. Elaine is telling them about Niall's antics, and Marianne is laughing in a generous way, not because the stories are so funny, but to make Elaine feel welcome. Peggy passes plates around the table, and Marianne touches Connell's shoulder and hands him a cup of coffee. Because the white dress and because of the small white china cup, he wants to say, "You look like an angel." It's not even something Helen would mind him saying. He can't talk like that in front of people anyway, saying whimsical, affectionate things. He drinks the coffee, eats some bread. The coffee is very hot and bitter, and the bread is soft and fresh. He starts to feel tired. After lunch, he goes upstairs to shower, and there are four rooms, so he has one to himself, with a huge sash window over the garden. After his shower, he dresses in the only presentable clothes he has left, a plain white t-shirt and the blue jeans he has had since he was in school. His hair is wet. He feels clear-headed, an effect of coffee and the high water pressure in the shower and the cool cotton on his skin. He hangs the damp towel over his shoulders and opens the window, cherries hanging on the dark green trees like earrings. He thinks about this phrase once or twice. He could put it in an email to Marianne, but he can't email her when she's downstairs. Helen wears earrings, usually a pair of tiny gold hoops. He lets himself fantasize about her briefly because he can hear the others are downstairs anyways. He thinks about lying on her back. He should have thought about it in the shower, but he was tired. He needs the Wi-Fi code to the house. I feel like I gotta sneeze. Nah. 'Cause I don't wanna be in love with another, even in another life. Like Connell, Helen was popular in school. She still goes to lengths to keep in touch with her old friends and extended family. There it is. Um, remembering birthdays, posting nostalgic photographs on Facebook. She always RSVPs to parties and arrives on time. She's always taking group photographs again and again until there's one of everybody there's one that everybody is happy with. In other words, she's a nice person, and Connell is beginning to understand that he actually likes nice people, that he even wants to be with one. Say what? UC Davis mentioned? She had one serious boyfriend in the past, a guy named Rory, who she broke up with her first year in college. He's in UCD, UC Davis. Huh. That's so fun. That is so fun. So Connell has never bumped into him, but he has looked at his photographs on Facebook. He's not unlike Connell in build and complexion, but somehow gawky looking and unfashionable. Connell admitted to Helen once that he looked him up online, and she asked what he made of him. I don't know, said Connell. He seems kind of uncool, doesn't he? She thought that was hilarious. They were lying in bed. Connell had his arms around her. Is that your type? You like uncool guys? He said. You tell me. Why? Am I uncool? I think so, she said. I mean that in a nice way. I don't like cool people. He sat up slightly to look down on her. Am I really? He said. I'm not offended, but honestly, I thought I was kind of cool. You're such a cliche, though. I am? In what way am I? You have the thickest Sligo accent, she said. I do not. I can't even believe that. No one's ever said that to me before. Do I really? She was still laughing. He stroked his hand over her belly, grinning to himself because he was making her laugh. I can hardly understand you half the time, she said. Thankfully, you're the strong and silent type. He had to laugh then, too. Helen, that is brutal, he said. She tucked a hand behind her head. Do you honestly think you're cool? She said. Well, not anymore. She smiled to herself. Good. It's good that you're not. Helen and Marianne first met back in February on Dawson Street. He and Helen were walking along holding hands when he saw Marianne coming out of Hodges Figgis wearing a black beret. Oh, hi, he said in an agonized voice. He thought of dropping Helen's hand, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Hi, Marianne said. You must be Helen. The two women then made a perfectly competent and genial, genial conversation while he stood there panicking and staring at various objects in the surrounding environment. Afterward, Helen asked him, so you and Marianne were always just friends, or they were in his room then on Persay Street? Buses went by outside and threw a column of yellow light on the bedroom door. Yeah, more or less, he said. Like, we were never together as such, but you've slept together. Yeah, kind of. No, yeah. To be fair, we have. Is that a big deal? No, I'm just curious, said Helen. It was like a friends with benefits type of thing. Basically. Connell, don't say that. It wasn't just that. You love her. In final year of school and for a while last year, it wasn't serious or anything. Helen smiled at him. He was raking the bottom of his lips with his teeth, something he remembered to stop doing only after she'd already seen him. She looks like she goes to art college, said Helen. I guess you think she's really chic. He gave a little laugh, looked at the floor. It's not like that, he said. We've known each other since we were kids. It doesn't have to be weird that she's your ex, said Helen. She's not my ex. We're just friends. But before you were friends, you were, well, she wasn't my girlfriend, he said. But you had sex with her, though. He covered his entire face with his hands. Helen laughed. After that, Helen was determined to make friends with Marianne, as if to prove a point. When they saw her at parties, Helen went out of her way to compliment her hair and clothing, and Marianne would nod vaguely and then continue expressing some in-depth opinion about the Magdalene Laundry report on the Dennis O'Brien case. Objectively, Connell did find Marianne's opinions interesting, but he could see how fondness for expressing them at length to the exclusion of lighter conversation was not universally charming. One evening, after overly long discussion about Israel, Helen became irritable, and on the walk home, she told Connell she found Marianne self-absorbed. Because she talks about politics too much, said Connell. I wouldn't call that self-absorbed, though. Helen shrugged, but drew a breath inward through her nose that indicated she didn't like his interpretation of her point. She was the same way in school, he added, but she's not putting it on. She's genuinely interested in that stuff. She really cares about Israeli peace talks. Surprised, Connell replied simply, yeah. After a few seconds of walking along in silence, he added, as I do, to be honest, it's fairly important. Helen sighed out loud. He was surprised that she would sigh in such a petulant way and wondered how much she has had to drink. Her arms were folded in her chest. Not being preachy, he went on. Obviously, we're going to have to save the Middle East by talking about it at a house party. I think Marianne just thinks about this stuff a lot. You don't think maybe she does it for attention? Said Helen. He frowned in a conscious effort to look thoughtful. Marianne was so totally uninterested in what people thought of her, so extremely secure in her own self-perception, that it was hard to imagine her caring for attention one way or the other. She did not altogether, as far as Connell knew, actually like herself, but praise from other people seemed as relevant to her as disapproval had been at school. Honestly, he said, not really. She seems like she seems to like your attention well enough. Connell swallowed. He only then understood why Helen was annoyed, and not trying to veil her annoyance. He didn't think Marianne had been paying him any special notice, though. She did always listen when he spoke, a courtesy she occasionally failed to pay to others. He turned his head to look at a passing car. I didn't notice that, he said eventually. To his relief, Helen dropped this specific theme and settled back into a more general critique of Marianne's behavior. Every time we see her at a party, she's always flirting with like 10 different guys, said Helen. Talk about craving male approval. Pleased that he was no longer implicated in the censure, Connell smiled and said, yeah, she wasn't like that in school at all. You mean she didn't act so slutty, said Helen. Feeling suddenly concerned and regretting that he had his guard down, Connell again fell silent. He knew that Helen was a nice person, but he forgot sometimes how old-fashioned her values were. After a time, he said uncomfortably, here, she's a friend, all right? Don't be talking about her like that. Helen didn't respond, but hiked her folded arms further up her chest. It was the wrong thing to say. Later, he would wonder if he was really defending Marianne or just defending himself from an implied accusation about his own sexuality, that he was tainted somehow, that he had unacceptable desires. But now the unspoken consensus is that Helen and Marianne don't like each other very much. They're different people. Connell thinks the aspects of himself that are most compatible with Helen are his best aspects, his loyalty, his basic practical outlook, his desire to be thought of as a good guy. With Helen, he doesn't feel shameful about things. He doesn't find himself saying weird stuff during sex. He doesn't have the persistent sensation that he belongs nowhere, that he never will belong anywhere. Marianne had a wildness that got into him for a while and made him feel like he was like her, that they had the same unnameable spiritual injury, and that neither of them could fit into the world. But he was never damaged like she was. She just made him feel that way. Dang, I have a sore throat after this. Sore goat. Ooh. Even in another life. Sorry, just checking on my sports. Oh, Miles Sanders out for the rest of the season? Oh. Jesus Christ. So sad. Man, we suck.
So what more can you tell us about when this injury actually occurred?
What is sciatica? Is that like nerve pain? Okay, one night he was waiting for Helen in college just outside the Graduates Memorial Building. She was coming from the gym at the other end of the campus, and they were going to get the bus to her house together. He was standing on the steps looking at his phone when the door behind him opened and a group of people came out in formal dresses and suits, all laughing and talking to each other. The light in the hallway behind them cast them into a silhouette, so it took him a second to recognize Marianne. She was wearing a long, dark colored dress and had her hair piled up high on her head, making her neck look slender and exposed. She caught his eye with a familiar expression. "Hello," she said. He didn't know the people she was with. He guessed that they were from the debating society or something. "Hi," he said. How could this feeling for her ever be anything like this? Feeling for other people. But part of the feeling was knowing the terrible hold he'd have over her, and still had, and could not foresee ever losing. Helen arrived then. He noticed her when she called out to him. She was wearing her leggings and trainers, gym bag slung over her shoulder, a damp sheen on her forehead visible under the streetlight. He felt a vast rush of love for her, love and compassion, almost sympathy. He knew that he belonged with her. What they had together was normal, a good relationship. The life they were living was the right life. He took the bag off her shoulder and lifted a hand to wave to Marianne goodbye. She didn't wave back, she just nodded. "Have fun," Helen said. Then they went back to the bus. He was sad for Marianne after that, sad that nothing in her life had ever truly seemed healthy, and sad that he'd had to turn away from her. He knew that it caused her pain. In a way, he was even sad for himself. Sitting on the bus, he continued to picture her standing on the doorway with the light behind her, how exquisite she looked, and what glamorous, formidable person she was. And the subtle expression that came over her when she looked at him. But she couldn't be what she wanted. After a time, he realized Helen was speaking, and he stopped thinking about all that and started listening. Woo! God, this is a long ass chapter. Golly. Oh, let's see if you can read all this. Getting closer and closer and closer. Okay. For dinner, Peggy cooks pasta, and they eat at the round garden table. Oh, I forgot that they're on vacation. The sky is a thrilling chlorine blue, stretched, taut, and featureless like silk. Marianne brings a cold bottle of sparkling wine out from the house with condensation running down the glass like sweat, and asks Niall to open it. Connell finds this decision judicious. Marianne is very smooth and sociable on these occasions, like a diplomat's wife. Connell is seated between her and Peggy. The cork sails over the garden wall and lands somewhere no one can see it. A crest of white spills over the lip of the bottle, and Niall pours the wine into it. Elaine's glass and pours it into Elaine's glass. The glasses are broad and shallow like saucers. Jamie turns his empty one upside down and says, "Do we not have a proper champagne glasses?" "These are champagne glasses," says Peggy. "No, I mean like the tall ones," says Jamie. "You're thinking of flutes," says Peggy. "These are copes, cups, I don't know." Um, Helen would laugh at this conversation and thinking of how much she would laugh. Connell smiles. "It says it's not a matter of life and death, is it?" Peggy fills her glass and passes the bottle to Connell. "I'm just saying these aren't for champagne," says Jamie. "You're such a Philistine," Peggy says. "I'm a Philistine," he says. "We're drinking champagne out of gravy boats." Niall and Elaine start laughing, and Jamie smiles under the mistaken impression that they are laughing at his witticism. Marianne touches the fingertip to her eyelid lightly, as if to removing a piece of dust or grit. Connell hands her the bottle, and she accepts it. "It's an old style of champagne glass," says Marianne. "They belong to my dad. Go inside and get yourself a flute if you prefer. They're in the press over the sink." Jamie makes a wide ironic eyes and says, "I didn't realize it was such an emotional issue for you." Marianne puts the bottle in the center of the table and says nothing. Connell has never heard Marianne mention her father like that, so casual in a conversation. Nobody else at the table seems aware of this. Elaine may not even know Marianne's father is dead. Connell tries to catch Marianne's eyes, but he can't. "The pasta's delicious," says Elaine. "Oh," says Peggy, "it's very al dente, isn't it? Maybe a bit too al dente." "I think it's nice," says Marianne. Connell takes a mouthful of wine, which foams cold in his mouth and then disappears like air. Jamie starts telling an anecdote about one of his friends who is on a summer internship in Goldenman Satch. Connell finishes his wine, and unobtrusively Marianne refills his glass. "Thanks," he says quietly. Her hand hovers for a second as if she's going to touch him, and then she doesn't. She says nothing. The morning after the scholarships were announced, he and Marianne went to the swearing-in ceremony together. She'd been out the night before and looked hungover, which pleased him because the ceremony was so formal and they had to wear gowns and recite things in Latin. Afterwards, they went to breakfast together in a cafe near the college. They sat outside a table on the street, and people walked by carrying shopping bags and having loud conversations on the phone. Marianne drank a single cup of black coffee and ordered a croissant, which she didn't finish. Kyle, oh my gosh, had a large ham and cheese omelet with 2 slices of buttered toast and a tea with milk in it. Marion said she was worried about Peggy, who was the only one of the 3 of them to not get a scholarship. She said it would be hard for her. Connell inhaled and said nothing. Peggy didn't need subsidized tuition or free on-campus accommodation because she lived at home in Black Rock, and her parents were both doctors, but Marianne was intent on seeing her get the scholarship as a matter of personal feeling rather than economic fact. "Anyway, I'm happy for you," Marianne said. "I'm happy for you too. But you deserve it more." He looked up at her. He wiped his mouth with a napkin. "You mean in terms of the financial stuff?" he said. "Oh," she replied. "Well, I meant that you're a better student." She looked down critically at her croissant. He watched her. "Though in terms of financial circumstances too, obviously," she said. "I mean, it's kind of ridiculous they don't means test these things. I guess we're from very different backgrounds, class-wise." "I don't think much about it," she said. Quickly she added, "Sorry, that's an ignorant thing to say. Maybe I should think about it more. You don't consider me your working class friend?" She gave a smile that was more like a grimace and said, "I'm conscious of the fact that we got to know each other because your mother works for my family. I also don't think my mother is a good employer. I don't think she pays Lorraine very well. No, she pays her fuck all." He cut a thin slice of omelet with his knife. The egg was more rubbery than he would have liked. I'm surprised this hasn't come up before," she said. "I think it's totally fair if you resent me." "No, I don't resent you. Why would I?" He puts his knife and fork down and looked at her. She had an anxious little expression on her face. I just feel weird about all this, he says. I feel weird wearing a black tie and saying things in Latin. You know, at the dinner last night, those people were serving us. They were students. They're working to put themselves through college while we sit there eating the free food they put in front of us. Is that not horrible? Of course it is. The whole idea of a aristocracy or whatever, it's evil, you know. I think about that. But we are but what are we supposed to do? Give back the scholarship money? I don't see what that achieves. Well, it's easy to think of reasons not to do something. You said you're going to do it, gonna do it. You're not going to do it either. So don't guilt trip me, she said. They continued eating then, as if they were acting out an argument and both sides were equally compelling, and they had chosen their positions more or less at random, only in order to have the discussion out. A large seagull landed at the base of the nearby streetlight, its plumage magnificently clean and soft looking. You need to get it straight in your mind what you think a good society looks like, said Marianne. And if you think people should be able to go to college and get an English degree, Dean, what's up, Brady? English degrees, you shouldn't feel guilty for doing that yourself because you have the right to do so. That's okay for you. You don't feel guilty about anything. She starts rooting around in her handbag looking for something. Offhandedly, she said, "Is that how you see me?" No, he said, then uncertain of how guilty he thought Marianne felt about anything he had. I don't know. I should have known coming to Trinity that it would be like this. I'm just looking at all this scholarship stuff thinking, Jesus, what would people at school say? For a second, Marianne said nothing. He felt in some obscure sense that he had expressed himself incorrectly, but he didn't know how. To be fair, she said, you were always very concerned with what people in school would say. He remembered then about how people had treated her at the time and how he himself had treated her, and how bad he felt. It wasn't the conclusion he was hoping the conversation would have, but he smiled and said, ouch. She smiled back at him and then lifted her coffee cup. At the moment, he thought, just as their relationship at school had been on terms like this, the relationship now was on hers. But she's more generous, he thought. She's a better person. When Jamie's story finished, Marianne goes inside and comes back out with another bottle of sparkling wine and one bottle of red. Niall starts, I think it's Niall. Neil or Niall? Niall starts unwrapping the wire off the first bottle, and Marianne hands Connell a corkscrew. Peggy starts clearing away people's plates. Connell unpeels the foil from the top of the bottle as Jamie leans over and says something to Marianne. He sinks the screw into the cork and twists downwards. Peggy takes his plate away and stacks it with the others. He folds down the arms of the corkscrew and lifts the cork from the neck of the bottle with the sound of a lip smacking. The sky has dimmed into a cooler blue now, with several clouds on the rim of the horizon. Connell's face seems flush, and he wonders if he's sunburned. He likes imagining Marianne older sometimes with children. He imagines they're all here in Italy together, and she's making a salad out of something, and complaining to Connell about her husband, who is older, probably an intellectual, and Marianne finds him dull. Why didn't I marry you? She would say. He can see Marianne very clearly in this dream. He sees her face, and he feels that she has spent years as a journalist, maybe living in Lebanon. He doesn't see himself so well or know what he's been doing, but he knows what he would say to her. Money, he would say. And she would laugh without looking up from the salad. At the table, they were talking about their day trip to Venice, which trains they should take, which galleries are worth seeing. Marianne tells Connell, what's this? Oh. Yes, I would. Mom just asked if I wanted some burgers and fries. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't wanna be in love with another. All right. I don't know why we're bothering with Venice, says Jamie. It's all just full of Asians taking pictures of everything. God forbid you might have an encounter You have to encounter an Asian person, Niles says. There's a stillness at the table, Jamie says. What? It's clear from his voice and from the delayed pace of his response that he is now drunk. There's a still. Oh, wait, I just read that. It's kind of racist what you said about Asian people, Niles says. I'm not making a big thing of it. Oh, because all Asians at the table are going to get offended, are they? Says Jamie. Marianne stands up abruptly and says, I'll go get dessert. Connell is disappointed by this display of spinelessness, but he says nothing either. Peggy follows Marianne into the house, and everyone at the table is silent. A huge moth circles the dark air, and Jamie bats at it with his napkin. After a minute or two, Peggy and Marianne bring dessert out from the kitchen and a gigantic glass bowl of halved strawberries with a stack of white china dishes and silver spoons. 2 more bottles of wine. The dishes are passed around, and people fill them with fruit. She spent all afternoon having these little bastards, Peggy says. I feel so spoiled, says Elaine. Where's the cream, Jamie says. It's inside, says Marianne. Why didn't you bring it out, he says. Marianne pulls her chair back from the table coldly and stands up to go inside. It's almost dark now. Jamie ranges his eyes around the table, trying to find someone who will look back at him and agree that he is right for asking for the cream, and that Marianne was overreacting to an innocent query. Instead, people seem to avoid looking at him, and with a loud sigh, he knocks his chair back and follows her. The chair tips over noiselessly onto the grass. He goes into the side door into the kitchen and slams it behind him. Bruh, seriously? There's a back door too, which leads into the other part of the garden where the trees are. It's walled off from here, so only the tops of the trees are visible. By the time Connell turns his attention back to the table, Niall is staring at him. He doesn't know what Niall's stare means. He tries squinting his eyes to show Niall he's confused. Niall casts a significant look at the house and then back at him. Connell looks over his right shoulder. The light is on in the kitchen, leaking a yellowish glow through the garden doors. Wait, sorry, I think my mom texted me again. Cheese and onions? Yeah. That'd be yummy. That'd be good. Wow, okay. He only has a sidelong view, so he can't see what's going on inside. Elaine and Peggy are complimenting the strawberries when then Connell hears a raised voice coming from the house, almost a shriek. Oh, geez. Everyone freezes. He stands up from the table to go to the house and feels his blood pressure drop. He had a bottle of wine to drink by now, but no more. When he reaches the garden door, he sees Jamie and Marianne are standing at the counter having some kind of argument. They don't see Connell through the glass right away. He pauses with his hands on the door handle. Marianne is flushed, maybe from too much sun, or maybe she's angry. Jamie is unsteadily refilling his champagne glass with red wine. Connell turns the handle and comes inside. All right, he says. They both look at him. They both stop talking. He notices Marianne is shivering as if she's cold. Jamie lifts the glass sarcastically and Connell's directing sloshing wine on over the rim onto the floor. Put that down, says Marianne quietly. I'm sorry, what? Says Jamie. Put the glass down, please, she says. Jamie smiles and nods to himself. You want me to put it down? He says. Okay, look, I'm putting it down. He drops the glass on the floor and it shatters. Bro, F this guy, bro. Marianne screams a real scream from her throat and launches her body at Jamie, drawing her right arm behind as if it is to strike him. Connell steps in between them, glass crunches under his shoe, and he grabs Marianne by the upper arms. Behind him, Jamie is laughing. Marianne tries to push Connell aside. Her whole body shudders, and her face blotchy and discolored, like she's been crying. Come here, he says, Marianne. She looks at him. He remembers her in school, so bitter and stubborn with everyone. He knew things about her then. They look at each other, and the rigidity leaves her and she goes slack, like she's been shot. You're a fucking mental case, you are, says Jamie. You need help. Connell turns Marianne's body around and steers her towards the back door. She offers no resistance. Where are you going? Says Jamie. Connell doesn't answer. He opens the door and Marianne goes through without speaking. He closes it behind them. It's dark now in this part of the garden with only the mottled window providing any light. The cherries glow dimly on the trees. Over the wall, they can hear Peggy's voice. Together, he and Marianne walk down the steps and say nothing. The kitchen light goes out behind them. They can hear Jamie on the other side of the wall rejoining the others. Marianne is wiping her nose on the back of her hand. The cherries hang around them, gleaming like so many spectral planets. The air is light with scent, green like chlorophyll. They sell chlorophyll chewing gum in Europe, Connell has noticed. Overhead, the sky is velvet blue. Stars flicker and cast no light. They walk down a line of trees together away from the house and then stop. Marianne leans against a slim silver tree trunk and Connell puts his arms around her. She feels thin, he thinks. Was she so thin before? She presses her face on into his one remaining clean t-shirt. She's still wearing the white dress from earlier with a gold embroidered shawl now. He holds her tightly, his body adjusting itself to hers like the kind of mattress that's supposedly good for you. Wow, that's a really good simile. She softens into his arms. She starts to seem calmer. Their breathing slows into one rhythm. The kitchen light goes on for a time and then off again. Voices rise and recede. Connell feels certain about what he's doing, but it's blank certainty, as if he's blankly performing a memorized task. He finds his fingers are in Marianne's hair, and he starts stroking the back of her neck calmly. He doesn't know how long she has been doing this, or he doesn't know how long he's been doing this. She rubs her eyes with her wrist. Connell releases her. She feels in her pocket for a packet of cigarettes, a crushed box of matches. She offers him a cigarette and he accepts. She strikes a match and the flare of light illuminates her features in the darkness. Her skin looks dry and inflamed. Her eyes are swollen. She breathes in the cigarette, paper hisses, and the paper hisses in the flame. He lights his own, then drops the match in the grass and compresses it under his foot. They smoke quietly. He walks away from the tree, surveying the bottom of the garden, but it's too dark to make out. He returns to Marianne under the branches and absently pulls at a broad, waxy leaf. She hangs the cigarette on her lower lip and lifts her hair onto her hands, twisting it into a knot that she secures with an elastic tie from her wrist. Eventually, they finish their cigarette and stub them out in the grass. "Can I stay in your room tonight?" she says. "I'll sleep on the floor." "The bed is massive," he says. "Don't worry about it." The house is dark when they get back inside. In Connell's room, they undress down to their underwear. Marianne is wearing a white, small and triangular. They lie under the quilt. He's aware that he could have sex with her right now if he wanted to. She wouldn't tell anyone. He finds it strangely comforting and allows himself to think about what it would be like. "Hey," he would say quietly, "lie on your back, okay?" And she would just obediently lie on her back. So many things pass secretly between people anyway. What kind of person would he be if this happened now? Someone very different? Or the exact same person, himself, with no difference at all? After a time, he hears her say something he can't make out. "I didn't hear that," he says. "I don't know what's wrong with me," says Marianne. "I don't know why I can't be like normal people." Oh, they said the name. Her voice sounds oddly cool and distant, like a recording of her voice played after she herself has gone away or departed somewhere else. "In what way?" he says. "I don't know why I can't make people fall in love with me, or I can't make people love me. I think there was something wrong with me when I was born. Lots of people like you. Lots of people love you, Marianne. Okay, your family and your friends love you." For a few seconds, she was silent, and then she says, "You don't know my family." He had hardly even noticed himself using the word family. He'd just been reaching for something reassuring and meaningless to say. Now he doesn't know what to do. The same strange, unaccented voice, she continues, "They hate me." He sits up in bed to see her better. "I know you fight with them," he says, "but that doesn't mean they hate you. Last time I was home, my brother told me I should kill myself." Mechanically, Connell sits up straighter, pushing the quilt off his body as if he is about to get up. He runs his tongue around the inside of his mouth. "What did he say that for?" he says. "I don't know. He said no one would miss me if I was dead because I have no friends." "Would you not tell your mother if he talked to you like that?" "She was there," says Marianne. Connell moves his jaw around. The pulse in his neck is throbbing. He's trying to visualize the scene, The Serdians at home, Alan for some reason telling Marianne to commit suicide, but it's hard to picture Annie family behaving the way that she had described. What did she say? How did she react? I think she said something like, "Oh, don't encourage her." Slowly, Connell breathes in through his nose and exhales the breath between his lips. "And what provoked this?" he says. "Like, how did you get in this argument?" He senses that something in Marianne's face changes now, or hardens, but he can't name what exactly it is. "You think I did something to deserve it?" she says. "No, I'm not saying that. Sometimes I think I must deserve it. Otherwise, I don't know why it would happen. But if he's in a bad mood, he'll just follow me around the house. There's nothing I could do. He'll just come into my room. He doesn't care if I'm sleeping or anything." Connell rubs his palms on the sheet. "Would he ever hit you?" he says. "Sometimes. Less since I've moved away. To be honest, I don't even mind it that much. The psychological stuff is more demoralizing. I don't know how to explain it really. I know it. I know how it must sound." He touches his hand to his forehead. His skin is wet. She doesn't finish the sentence to explain how it must sound. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" he said. She says nothing. The light is dim, but he can see her open her eyes. "Marianne," he says, "this whole time we were together, why didn't you tell me any of this?" "I don't know. I suppose I didn't want to think I was damaged or something. I was probably afraid he wouldn't want me anymore." Finally, he puts his face in his hands. His fingers feel cold and clammy on his eyelids, and there were tears in his eyes. The harder he presses with his fingers, and the faster the tears seep out wet into his skin. "Jesus," he says. His voice sounds thick, and he clears his throat. "Come here," he says, and she doesn't come to him. He feels terribly ashamed and confused. They lie face to face, and he puts his arms around her body. In her ear, he says, "I'm sorry, okay?" She holds on to him tightly, her arms winding around him, and he kisses her forehead, but he always thought she was damaged. He thought it anyway. He screws his eyes shut with guilt. Their faces feel hot and damp now. He thinks of her saying, "I thought you wouldn't want me anymore." Her mouth is so close that her breath is wet on his lips. They start to kiss, and her mouth tastes like dark red wine. Her body shifts against him. He touches her breast with his hand, and in a few seconds he could be inside of her again, and then she says, "No, we shouldn't." She draws away just like that. He can hear himself breathing in silence, the pathetic heaving of his breath. He waits until it... Wow, we did it. We actually read it. Slows down again, not wanting to have his voice break when he tries to speak. "I'm really sorry," he says. She squeezes his hand. It's a very vague, sad gesture. He can't believe the stupidity of what he had just done. "Sorry," he says again, but Marianne has already turned away. All right, we did it. Dang, cousin. We read a lot of pages today. That's awesome. We read 50 pages. What? That's awesome. That's so fun. Wow. Yeah, I think stories like this, I think, are much easier to read. I guess because it's not just like paragraph on paragraph. Obviously, Sally Rooney does a fantastic job of describing like these little idiosyncrasies that both of them share, painting scenes, the triviality of, like Connell uncorking a wine bottle, but then also just like the delicateness of their Jacob, hello, of their relationship or whatever is salvageable of their relationship. Obviously one day, or not one day, after I finish this, we'll get back to reading Log of the Sea of Cortez. As I started it, gonna finish it. I mean, it's not a bad story. I think it's just a different story than normal people, obviously. Obviously one a bit more contemporary. But yeah, no, I guess this would be considered probably more of a novel as opposed to like a retelling, I guess. But wow. Yeah, no, what a book. We read 50 pages today. Can you believe that? I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this is gonna finish. I mean, I don't think it'll be well considering everything, what a tumultuous relationship these two individuals have. But yeah, I think this is also the longest Let's Read stream in Let's Read streaming history. I'm trying to think of back to our Wealth of Nation days. Here we go, right here. Look at that, bro. How far do we even get into this, John? Okay, so he got to page 302 on this, but I don't ever recalling ever having a live stream that was an hour and a half, maybe one that was an hour long. But yeah, I would like to say thank you for those who tuned in. Hopefully didn't stutter too much. Hopefully I was able to distinct between who was speaking and when it was just narration. I think I like that too. I think I really enjoy having dialogue to read as well, as it sort of kind of breaks up the monotony, at least kind of gives the use of tone a little bit more meaning, especially reading aloud. Yeah, no, what a great story this has been. Yeah. We'll finish it soon, or whenever it gets finished. I've been on a roll with it, so yeah. Thank you. Here's to next time. Oh wait, no, not that. End stream. Bye-bye.